Hello everyone, we are back in Bioshock and I have somehow a feeling that we are going to finish it today. We're getting kind of close, right? It's a very challenging game and let's see what we can do today. That said, I do provide fresh content on YouTube every day, so if you guys want to get notified when there's something new to watch, please subscribe and hit that bell icon. The bell icon is what gives you those notifications 100%. The subscription does not. However, by subscribing, you're still supporting me. That said, we also have a Discord. That's our primary method of communication. And we have a merch store as well. Both the Discord invite and the merch link can be found on my website, the video description, and the YouTube channel. Now let's get into the game and see what we can do. Again, I need to remember I can't switch windows during loading and saving. The game is loading currently, so I can't touch the keyboard. This is why I'm holding it like that. Oh god, I forgot that we have that stupid view. Alright, let me check YouTube here. YouTube is still dead skis. Is it lagging? Oh yeah, it's lagging. Fred is here. Hi Fred, how are you doing? You stream every day, except when you are on holiday. No, on holiday I have recorded stuff. I provide recorded stuff so that you guys can enjoy. Right, am I ready? Probably not. But let's go. Sailing. Right, you go and do whatever you need to be doing. Did I pick the wrong side? That was the only one that was able to fit. Rick, I need to protect her. I'm out of that stuff. You recorded Resident Evil on holiday? No, I recorded before and then I make it available on holiday. You can schedule stuff. Go. Go. She's not talking at all. Right, I recorded like on the weekend before, and then I schedule it for a day and a time, and then it releases at 5 p.m., which is the usual time.
That might be plenty for the working scrubs and the pencil pushers, but I need more. More! I want to splice till there ain't nothing left to splice with!
A
plane is nearby. You are reaching close.
She's going away? Okay, let's become invisible here.
Time for Betty Bye, Mr. B.
There! You must use the needle of the little sister to drain Fontaine of his Adam. It is the only way to defeat him.
Here, take this. Stick it in the bad man.
Fontaine waits above. There will be no going back from here. Make sure you are ready to face him before moving on.
That said, how do I stick it into him? Let's figure that out first. First, let's look here. There's some stuff here. Incendiary builds. First aid kit. First aid kit. Lockbox. There's a lot of stuff here. Yeah, this is the end game. I'm 100% sure. Sure this is the final combat. So everything is full. I don't know how to use the needle. There is so many Resident Evils. I sadly say I haven't played most of them. I think he has only missed one day when the net was down in his head. I had a power outage. I had a power outage. Yeah, there's nothing I was able to do. I had a power outage. Alright, so this looks all good. There's a lot of E-typos. Frag grenades are full. Cool. This is the best we can do. Anti-personnel rounds, they don't even bother with anything else. But my question is, how do I drain this guy? Hold on, I will exit the game because I still have the little sister on me. And I will say continue. Let's see what that does. I have still the health bar of the little sister on the screen. Yeah, see, it disappeared now. But how do I drain the stuff? Alright, what do we have? Here. Up to weapon 8. Hack, use first aid, play, hints, map, quick save, quick load, harvest gatherer, rescue gatherer, pause game, search again. Let's make a good save here. I don't know how to get the E from him. Let's see. Fontaine. I think we will end the game today.
I remember when me and the crowd put you in that sub. You were no more than 2. You were my ace in the hole. But you were also the closest thing I ever had to a son. And that's why this hurts. Betrayal, kid. Life ain't strictly business.
I can't say.
Go! Go now! Hit him with the needle!
I don't have the needle.
Come on now, kid. You want to get serious? Come and get it, Mook! Get back here! Come and get it, Mook! Is that all you got? You little nothing! Come and get it, Mook! I'll get you! Here it is! Come and get it, Mook! Need a minute.
Where is he? Where is he? Where is he?
Gonna cut you into bits.
Where is he? Is he healing?
Go! Go now! Hit him with the needle!
Come and get it, Mook! I'll put you down! You think I'm alone in this world? I got more than enough mugs to watch my back while I recharge. Come and get it, Mook! I'm not finished! I'm ready! Come and get it, Mook! You think it'll be that? Come and get it, Mook! Is that...
Where'd he go?
Come and get it, Mook! Come and get it, Mook!
Oh shit, I did 2 heals.
Come and get it, Mook!
Kill him! Kill him!
You little... Catch my breath. And I'm gonna bury you and all their real eggs. Come and get it, Mook! I'll get you! Come and get it, Mook!
Holy crap.
Here it is! Come and get it, Mook! I'm ready! Come and get it, Mook! Duke! Is that... I'm not finished! I'll put you Come and get it, Duke! Get back here! I'm ready for you! You think you got a shot at this? I'm barely getting started! I had you built! I sent you topside!
No control, no
I
control.
called you back, showed you what you was capable of! Even that life you thought you had, that was something I dreamed up and had tattooed inside your head! Now if you don't call that family, I know what is! And now...
Oh, no! Oh, no! Oh, no, the little ones! Wow! He's cooked.
They offered you this city. And you refused it. And what did you do instead? What I've come to expect of you. You saved them. You gave them the one thing that was stolen from them. A chance. A chance to learn.
He can grow
To
up.
find love. To live. And in the end, what was your reward? You never said. But I think I know. A family.
Wow. He did it on the first try. He did it on the first try. Dude, how long am I in? Like 20 minutes? Yeah, 20 minutes. What the heck are we going to do? Okay, I turned the sound down and this is what happened. Director's commentary. We're missing a couple. That we're making this one you have not yet uncovered, but we can listen to the ones that we have, right? So let's do it in the order. I have no idea what to expect. I've never done this before.
Bioshock was groundbreaking in many regards when it released in 2007, though fundamentally it shared many consistencies with Irrational's System Shock series. What elements of System Shock translated into Bioshock, and what was refined, altered, and innovated upon to create the world of Rapture? Let's take a look at the long road from System Shock to Bioshock.
It's a movie playing, and the director's talking. I've never seen this before.
Everyone knows where the game ended up, but I think
Another one-day finish game. For games, 30 hours straight, no problem, yep.
fans would be interested to learn where this game or the idea of doing this game started. And I think, you know, folks know System Shock and the legacy of that game, huge fan base. Did it start as a System Shock game initially?
No, I mean, because
Okay.
we didn't have the
Right.
the rights to that,
Yeah.
right? We kind of felt that there was more game design to mine there. You know, that it was sort of, we did that one game, and it was sort of the first game that really combined shooting and RPG, and it was a very small budget. You know, it was a very small team, and it was the first game we had ever done. So we got pretty lucky, I think, in terms of how well it came out, but but the odds were sort of stacked against it. And the team, was really enthusiastic about doing a game like that. And time had evolved, and the team was much more. We had done a bunch of games together, and we had a stable technology base, and we were like, okay, well, which System Shock 2 was not. I mean, that engine no game had ever shipped on that engine. It was a very crude piece of technology. Most of us had never shipped a game at the time. So like, well, what if we had a stable technology base, and we had a team that was more experienced and more seasoned, and we had, an actual, like, art director, and which we didn't really have on System Shock 2. What could we do? And so I think there was a lot of enthusiasm in the team to really try to do a more mature version of that kind of game.
Again, this is a movie. I'm not playing this. Oh, nice headshot. I recognize a
This is
headshot.
before we had sold the company to Take-Two, and we were an independent developer, right? We were sitting there, we were using the money we made from other development deals we had, and we would try to scrape together whatever time and money we had to work on this thing. And it was not actually something I was particularly keen on doing. The team was much more keen on doing a sort of a System Shock-ish game than I was, because
That's your pitching, right? Like System Shock 3 at one point, right?
well, I mean, there was an actual System Shock
Right.
3 that we were pitching
Okay.
back in the day when we were right after System Shock 2, but that never happened.
Right, yeah.
We couldn't get anybody interested because System Shock 2 sold like 5 copies, right? And so as the business guy, the guy who had to not only just sort of write the content, but the guy who had to go out and get the deals and pay everybody, I wasn't particularly excited about doing this, because it was very disappointing when we did System Shock 2 and nobody bought it. It got great reviews. It got these insane reviews, but it left us in a place where it didn't really move the needle for us in terms of making payroll. So I wasn't super excited about it, because I didn't see a publisher be interested
Notice
in it.
the
and I didn't
figure
see
between the
audience
two on the
actually
left
particularly
and the
interested
shadow
in
it
the game.
casts
And
on the
it was
wall.
really the team who convinced me to invest in this, because they're enthusiastic. I think a lot of them came to the studio because of System Shock 2. And so finally they sort of battered me down. And it's good they did, because I was not the first fan of doing this.
And I know initially there was something called the Serene Dawn. That was a spaceship, or what was that?
No, that was
the name of a cult, right?
Cult.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's right. Okay.
That one's, I think, been lost to the... If I remember correctly, Serene Dawn was a cult. You were playing as a deprogrammer that was infiltrating the cult, and your name happened to be Carlos Coelho, who was one of our programmers at the time.
It's named after him, yeah. Then there was a story notion that I always really found interesting, which was that you have these cults, and you have sometimes people who they're these sort of characters who are really live on the edge of the gray morality, which is these guys who come in and essentially kidnap people out of these cults or rescue them, depending on how you look at it. Because what it really is, from a functional standpoint, it's a kidnapping, right? You're coming to an adult and you're saying, you're hired by their parents or whoever.
Fallout 4 is not short game. You can even do base building 100 hours easily. Yeah, I agree. Oh, it interrupted.
Bioshock was groundbreaking in many regards when it released in 2007.
All right, we lost this. I have no control
Bioshock was
over
groundbreaking
the
in many
player.
regards when it released in 2007, though iconic and haunting. The Big Daddy and Little Sisters of Bioshock immediately captivated the public's imagination. Big Daddy encounters defined the Bioshock experience, creating new mechanics and techniques that had not been seen before in gaming.
There's no controls for the movie playback.
So Big Daddy, Little Sister, such an iconic moment or series of moments in this game. I'm fascinated about how that got layered in, because we talked a lot about the setting and the tone. That is still, to me, a mechanic that I remember was very unique about, choosing to engage the Big Daddy and being a fight that is going to be very aggressive and different than a traditional boss fight. I know you had an idea, Ken, of sort of 3 different types of AIs interacting in the same world.
Yeah, we were sort of like I was trying to think of like AIs you hadn't seen before, and This is still pretty early. Like 10 years ago, a lot's changed in 10 years. So like AIs were still pretty much enemies who saw you and came after you.
Zigzag, shoot.
Yep, and then that was really the focus, is how you make them, use AI better at you, so I started thinking about, are there more primal behaviors to think about? And I was watching a nature show one day, it's typical nature shows, and it's like observe the mother tiger taking care of her young, one of those kind of things. And I realized that we don't even need a narrator on those shows. We understand certain behaviors just by looking at them. They're very primal, like somebody protecting their young, the predator-prey behavior. Those things were you don't need dialogue for that. And AIs at that point, we didn't have the ability to do a lot of sort of, smart AI. Yeah. So I said, well, what if their behaviors are just very primal, and we can model those behaviors? So aggro rules is something we knew we can model, right? How does an AI aggro on you? What are the rules for that? Could they make a aggression display rather than just attack? And can another character appear afraid and hide behind the skirts of another character? And we started talking about these things. And the Big Daddy became very quickly, the actual form of the Big Daddy came very quickly as sort of this protector creature. The little sister took a lot longer, ironically, even though it's a much simpler notion in a lot of ways. The initial idea came out of sort of watching a nature show, and we're trying to work within our constraints of making, we couldn't make super complex AIs.
2007, right? So AI was poopies. Screwed! There you go.
That's the Big Daddy. She got it on him. He keeps her safe.
And the screen
When we
shakes when the
first got
thing
the
is walking.
system up and running. This is before the play test. We weren't really thinking about player facing these things. And we had this entire system set up that completely simulated what would happen. And you'd play through the vertical slice, and you walk in a room and everybody's dead, because the system would work perfectly. And
The Big Daddy
you
would
weren't there to
attack
see
one
the
of
fight. Yeah.
And we track they weren't called Little Sisters at the time, but we track how much they were harvesting, and it was all like a Command and Conquer level simulation.
Yeah.
And players didn't care or notice.
Yep.
And so we just abandoned all that stuff.
Yeah, so that took us a step towards, how do we present this to the player, then how do we make
It's the same in Fallout 4
which were
and
calling at the
Skyrim and so
time,
forth,
equivalent
right? There's
sister
some
design
AI
like how do we make them empathetic towards the player? How do we make the player want
the
to
thief
engage
is
with
already
that? 'Cause
dead
at
by the
it
time
was
you get to the
slugs.
city, because the
So it's
guards
just a
caught
horrible
him.
design.
Originally were slugs, right?
Yeah.
Not actually.
Which is a horrible design in so many ways, because you don't care about slugs,
Right.
and they're also on the ground, so you don't see them. They're not like at eye level, and they're dark. So
But you still have something. We still the trailer had like the same, or not the trailer, the demo or prototype we did. So had the Big Daddy sort of like interacting with the little slug.
How,
And
slugs crawl around the Big Daddy? Or
no,
No,
it's this awful
that's a
little
level of
mesh.
sophistication. Yeah.
It's like a little beetle, sort of.
Yeah,
It was terrible.
yeah.
And they were protecting
And they had
Protecting the beetles.
the beetles? What?
And, no,
and
and
the
it
Big
was
Daddies
so
had two drills. They didn't have a hand, so they could. There's no way they could
Right.
like.
It's just fascinating me because like the little sister, it's like there's such humanity in it, which you really connect with.
You would,
Which
Think of,
seems
a
like
little-
you would
a
think
smart
that would
thing
be
to go
the
straight
obvious thing.
to.
Yeah.
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 We're not very smart.
The idea of sort of choosing to engage the Big Daddy. I mean, when I was first time I played the game, I mean that was always profound to me, because you sort of sit there and like, am I ready for this? And your choice to sort of like, the kind of
Yeah, because he
opposite of
doesn't
stealth,
attack
like when
you
want to be
until you
discovered.
attack him.
Was that always the mechanic with the Big Daddy?
Yeah, the idea was that they would have very particular rules about engaging with you that were entirely dependent on how the threat level towards, not them, towards their creature they were protecting.
Yeah, that was set, and then as you worked through it, I'm sure there were conversations about how difficult do we make these fights, and sort of the balancing of that, and even
he's pissed
with
now.
the game, you don't start off with a Big Daddy.
Son,
It's
your
only
health
ways
is really
into the game before you
small.
actually get to that. So
And if
that-
you have
that
to
was
reload the
sort of
You
shotgun,
actually
you're not doing
encounter
so
the
good.
notion of Big Daddy and Little Sister many times before you actually are freed into an arena where you can actually fight them. You
Yeah.
see them.
sneaking out, pipes.
You go.
Yeah,
you
there.
see them.
See?
You see them walking down a hall. You see the first time you see a Little Sister, she's harvesting, and then you see the Big Daddy come and protect her. And we realized it was 4 or 5 sequences we had to do to set the stage for these characters. And look, we were hoping they'd be iconic and people would respond to the way they did, because we certainly spent energy on them with the expectation that they'd have an impact that we really just as easily could have turned out that nobody
I think
cared.
the actual very first time, and not a lot of people see it. There's a little sister in the vent in Kashmir restaurant that if you're looking in the right direction at the right time, you'll see her looking at you.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
she'll
yeah.
disappear into the vent.
It's the eyes,
No,
right?
it's the actual mesh.
Is it the mesh?
Because it was easier to do that
Right.
than new eyes, but yeah.
No, no, no.
Thank you.
The path of the righteous is not always easy.
The thing as you play through the game, I think the moments with those sort of encounters certainly stand out to the player. For you guys, as you were developing it, was there a debate about how often to sort of have those encounters? Like, like how many Big Daddies would there be? How would that play out? I mean, was that something that sort of changed as you?
No, I think we decided there would be 3. I think it was 3 per level.
So 3 and 2 in smaller levels. We did have a third Big Daddy that was mostly finished, but we couldn't make it fun. Like that last 10% of an AI is always like, where's the fun? Like, how do you really make it
They put it into
functionality?
I think they put it into Bioshock 2, didn't they?
They might have, yeah.
They might have, I don't know.
But it was fully rigged, fully animated, but we just didn't have the time we needed to really polish it. So we ended up shipping with the bouncer and Rosie.
Hunting the Big Daddy, that demo was a huge moment, I think, in the game's kind of marketing campaign. And that really, I think, sold the tension of that battle. When you showed that, did the entire game feel like that, or was that really more of just like a vertical slice of what you wanted the game to feel like?
That at that point was more what we wanted to feel like, because the Big Daddy had a lot of problems at that point. But we were confident we could do that. Like, we wanted to make sure that was an experience we could deliver on. And it was like it functioned, but it would do really weird things.
Wow,
Like, it had
did
this
you just see
tendency
that?
at the time to, if you did the wrong thing, that it would turn into basically a super ball and start like a tiny little super ball. The Big Daddy would go, turn to a super ball and start bouncing off the ceiling and walls like a million miles an hour. Do you remember why he did that, or what was going on?
I'm sure it was some physics bug that
And so that actually happened. Sometimes we were doing the demo, and Joe Falstick, who was the guy running the demo with me in Barcelona, was very good at making sure that he turned away from the Big Daddy. Like, oh yeah, I guess we killed the Big Daddy. He must be dying over there. But so all things were functional, but they weren't really. They didn't have all their bells and whistles on yet. It was really good for us because it sort of gave us some confidence that people would respond to just the notion of watching Little Sister and biding your time and choosing your moment.
Well, it gave us confidence, but it also gave us a tool that the development team as a whole could gather around and say, we want to make it like this. Like, yes, a lot of elements in that demo were scripted, but they provided a framework for us to go back and how do we make that so it's not scripted? How do we make this robust enough?
See how
so
the
that
health
player can
and
actually use
ease
these
in the top
systems?
left
So it was
changed
something
over
that we could
time.
point
That's
to
the
and say,
current one.
All right, how are we going to do this? Like, let's break it down and let's figure it out.
And that was like in September, and actually the game was done in February, March, so we weren't that far off.
Yeah.
A lot went into it in those final months. But it was a big confidence boost for us because we thought it was the most important thing about the game, besides the world, was this sort of Big Daddy, Little Sister concept. And if people didn't care about it, it would have been a problem for us because we spent a lot of time on it.
No, it's very humane, right? It's a very relatable concept. If you have to reload, you're screwed. Look how much health he's losing. Yeah, he got him though. Alright, so what did I have here that I just watched? Behind the page, the deeper shooter creating process community theater.
Bioshock was groundbreaking in many regards. One of the biggest challenges Irrational faced when developing Bioshock was figuring out a way to retain the feeling of a deep RPG while making the game accessible to a broader console audience. Ultimately, the team succeeded in creating an intricate system of weapon and character upgrades that gave the player choice and customization while keeping the gameplay fast, lean, and engaging. One of the hallmarks of Bioshock, to me at least, was that it really blended RPG and
sort of first-person action game together in a way that is sort of standard today, but a decade ago was really pretty revolutionary. And I know for the team, I think at some point it became clear that you wanted this to work on consoles, not on PC, right?
Well, both, yeah.
Yeah. But so the idea of doing a console game and a PC game, and doing something that sort of felt like a shooter but had much more depth. And I know in some of the early design docs you talked about sort of creating an FPS plus versus an RPG light. What was the difference in your mind between those two?
I think for us, the big difference between System Shock and Bioshock ended up being that System Shock was more about your character growth and Bioshock was more about the environment. Because with System Shock, we really didn't have System Shock 2. We didn't really have either our team to make enough assets or the visual power to sort of make a really convincing environment. But as we started working on Bioshock, the art team was so strong that the ability to tell a story within the environment became the most important thing about the game. And that was sort of not something we thought right at the beginning. That was not really a concept we
Crazy,
had.
look at this.
But as we started building things, we could realize that the visual world was the star of this thing. The Rapture was really the star of this thing.
They were smuggling
and
Bibles
telling the story outside of cutscenes, telling
into
it in
Rapture,
the world.
into
so
the
the
city.
gamer could discover the story rather than us telling him the story, telling him or her the story. And it was still very much for the time, I think for the time, quite different than what you had seen in terms of there wasn't a lot of growth in shooters. So
Right.
it was still, I think, for the time, very, very revolutionary. But I think System Shock 2 was even more ahead of its time in terms of that growth thing, because we defocused a little bit. Primarily, part of it was just figuring out how to do that.
So
all on
tomorrow we're
console
going to play
controller,
the
which was
Outer
very
Worlds
tricky.
again. Outer Worlds 2. And I haven't made up my mind about Friday. Probably Outer Worlds 2 on Friday and then Saturday, Sunday.
You see a plasma, you see like a upgraded weapon, people are like, oh, I've never seen that before in a shooter.
Fucker,
And
New
that was,
Dawn.
when you were coming out of the sort of, the Quake, Doom, Half-Life, where it's like you have, 8 weapons on the keyboard and you sort of knew what they were and they weren't going to change. Yeah. Sean, was that something that, from a sort of creative standpoint, was it always clear that that was something you guys wanted to do, or it evolved over time because you wanted to have more depth in the game?
I mean, it certainly evolved over time, and each upgrade path was slightly had its own unique challenges. Like certainly upgrading the weapons, you had to design a base weapon that didn't feel like crap, still felt like something that you wanted to use, but then the ability to add the upgrades to that, and each of the upgrades can come in any order, so you have to be aware that this, parts A, B, and C could come in at any different time to upgrade the weapon. In a first-person shooter, that's your star. That's the thing that you're seeing all the time. When it comes to other things, plasmids, things that are,
Tonics.
Tonics, yes, sorry. It's been a while.
Come on, Sean.
I know, it's 10 years. Those things were more offloaded to machines.
Okay, so that
you would
was
then
recorded
have to
in
interact with, so you're not
2017.
carrying the inventory around
This
with
is
you.
why I didn't have it
Each-
when I
each of
played the
these
game in
decisions on,
2007.
how we're going to upgrade the player, it wasn't like a mouse and keyboard, okay, we can just use the mouse and you have all these buttons at your disposal.
You could arbitrarily point at a part of the screen really
Yeah.
easily, which you could do in System Shock 2.
Yeah, so we certainly, learned trial by fire when we were trying to adapt these things to the console at the time.
Yeah, and like having different ammo types and stuff like that. Like we went through numerous iterations of the interface to make it. Like we had the first times we sort of put the interface into play. It was very obtuse and very tricky to
Look at
get
the
your
top
head
right,
around, and we
interface.
just kept working on it and working on it and working on it because you want to feel like second nature. But that was we spent a lot of time on that.
Boom.
What motivated the idea of having so much choice in the way you could sort of play through this game? What was it to give the player a better sense of authorship over the experience, or what was driving that?
I've always liked the idea of giving the player a lot of agency in terms of their play style.
That's a
and
good idea.
experimenting with the play style and trying different things and seeing what worked and didn't work and interacting with the environment. The notion that it's sort of a playground that you get to play around with and
Sandbox,
imprint your own desire on
Fallout
was great. Because
4.
I think we were more skeptical about being able to do that with story at the time. In fact, so much to the point where that became almost like a joke. That becomes the meta joke of the game of how little agency you have in your story. But agency in terms of how you play the experience and how you load out your weapons and how you interact with the environment, as compared to most shooters at the time, where basically like you can shoot them with the shotgun or shoot them with the the pistol. That was really important to us. So we spent a lot of time trying to make the world react in a way that you would expect and hope it to react when you tried something.
Right. And some of those
No.
system
No.
or decisions we made about systems fed back into the narrative, like locking Adam behind Big Daddy and the little sister. Like you can't.
Look,
get
the
Adam
robot
to
was
deal with Big
retreating.
Daddy,
It never
which then
does it in the
becomes
game. It
a
always
roving boss
advances.
fight, which then becomes another system that I don't know if we planned that from the start or was one of those happy, like, serendipity, like, oh, this decision that we made about putting Adam behind the Big Daddy totally works because now we have a different type of boss fight that you hadn't really seen in other games.
Actually, it was the other way, because what happened was originally there was no concept of Adam, and Big Daddy just had money and other treasure on them, like every other splicer. Yeah. And they were so tough, nobody would ever fight them, because why on earth would you go after that guy?
Right, go off a bunch of small slicers and get the same amount, yeah.
So we had to come up with a currency that was exclusive to them, because we knew that was where the fun was.
That's
right?
clever.
But we also
That's
knew
very
people
clever.
were terrified of them, and we didn't want to fight them.
Yeah.
So video game development and system
Nowadays,
development is a lot like
mobile
economics,
games
right?
have
You know,
like a
economics,
dozen
you try to
currencies.
encourage certain
Some of them you
behaviors
can
through
get
tax, usually
with
through tax policy.
with
You know, we
dollars.
want
Some of them you
business
can
growth,
get
so you
through
lower
events.
taxes on certain segments of the business.
Some of them are
economy, where you
limited
want
to a
encourage,
certain time of the
people
year.
to move into this area, so you make incentives to move in here. We had to make an incentive for players to fight the Big Daddy, and Adam became that incentive. And then once you had this Adam, then you had a new
What to do
piece
with
of
it.
narrative, which
Yeah.
they could then incorporate back into the story.
Get over and taste the Adam fucking drink.
Stay away from her, or it is you who will be shot next.
Easy now, Doctor. He's just looking for a wee bit of Adam. Just enough to get by.
I'll not have him hurt my little ones.
Talk a bit about the
Damn.
plasmids and the vending machines and that sort of whole approach to, I guess, what is kind of a tech tree, but, and coming from PC games, used to strategy games and whatnot with very complicated ways of.
Planet Crafter DLC November 17th. Astonia DLC November 20th. Ah, shit.
How you would upgrade things. I thought you guys did a really.
What's your vote?
You had a really
Astonia
interesting
or Planet
approach to
Crafter?
How you made it very accessible to a console
Bryce.
audience. How did that evolve? Was like
Astonia
did
or
you know
Planet
the vending
Crafter?
machines were going to be there from the get-go?
Well, we had vending machines in System Shock 2, so we were sort of lifting that, and I always thought that was a fun, notion to, because it's a affordance that people already understand. They see a vending machine, they know immediately, oh, that's where I buy stuff, right?
Yeah.
And you also then have to have a shopkeep. When we talked about wanting to make things, put limitations on ourselves so things felt fully believable.
Yeah.
If we had a shopkeeper sitting there, you can't shoot him. He sits there, he doesn't say anything. And all of a sudden he feels fake. Where a vending machine, the Circus of Values machine, can feel 100% authentic, despite the fact that
The
it's selling,
Circus
like,
of
Amazon and stuff
Values.
like that, which is,
But in an objective society where you don't have rules and regulations
Right.
on
You
that
have
type
that.
of thing, it feeds back into the narrative.
but you don't then break the fiction at all by having these characters who sort of don't really live and breathe in the world. So the vending machines became an important part of that, but we still want to give them character, and hence and so that clown image came from a piece of, that image is actually from like a fruit container or something from like the 1940s.
Okay.
And so we had a book of like royalty-free images, and I saw that image, and I'm like, let's put that clown on it, and we'll call it Circus of Values. And then, we wrote a line.
He coined the term.
Sort of asshole clown. And then we hired the best actor in the world to play that part. That was me.
Oh, he's saying it all too. The Circus of Values.
I didn't know you were really.
I was
your
a clown.
voice.
Yeah, I was a clown.
I hear it in my head every night.
My wife hates that voice. She hates that voice.
You can give us a little of it right here.
Welcome to the Circus of Values. She does not allow me to do that, so I
okay.
do it outside of the house.
Okay.
But it allowed us to have something that felt very rich and very real, while being very limited at the same time.
Feel your cravings at the Circus of Values.
And also, the plasmids and sort of the motif of sort of the videos and how you explain sort of what a plasmid was. That was a really fun way, I thought, to sort of explain that. Sean, how did you guys evolve that? Because it was a very artistic approach.
I think those came on pretty late too, because we were developing all these systems, and you make the assumptions because you're dealing with them every day that the player who gets this game is going to understand what these systems are. And,
Bryce,
you know, we always
Planet
joke that
Crafter
you
or
can't ship a development
I want to
game where you
do
can't
Astroneer, I
expect
think,
somebody
because
to
Planet
have a
Crafter is
README
just a
file
toxic
for all these
biome.
things.
Astroneer
Nobody's
is
understanding
like
what these
completely
plasmids
new,
are or how
right?
to use them. How do we present these to the audience in such a way that they're going to understand what it is fictionally and what it is functionally? It feels Rob Waters did a lot of the animations on those, and we sit down and we, you know, write out like a little 30-second commercial of what this thing is. And again, because going back to the narrative, this is what would happen in Rapture. People are trying to sell these things, so they would come up with commercials to explain why you need this. Using that as your framework, you can then come up with all of these, you know, little gags that people will remember that have a little personality to them. But I think ultimately in the end weren't that expensive to create because they're cheap.
I think one of the most important things about it is we didn't want them to be long, and we didn't have a lot of budget for the arts. We had like a couple of frames of animation in them essentially. And so we had to figure out how do we message how this thing works in like that. And that's what marketing is, right? You know, it's how do you message how something works. And marketing and tutorializing are very similar things, right? You're trying to get a message across in a very brief period of time in a very snappy fashion. And I think that one of the things that I always felt about games is that tutorials are sort of death. And because they're usually like, you know, you go into a scene and there's like a shooting range or something like that, and
narratively they never really make sense either.
And they're so boring. And so we always try to put a big burden on ourselves of how do we train people while not letting them know they're being trained, and brevity is really important to that. So
That's a good idea.
We had a bunch of art
like
constraints on that, which also led to a bunch of writing constraints. And so those things were like, I don't even know if they were 30 seconds.
Yeah, they're
like really short. Seconds. Yeah, like 15 seconds long. But we had to explain a whole plasmid in that period of time. Yeah. And I think that was a good exercise because it also made the game, it forced us to be concise and to really explain what this thing was like that.
Throw objects at foes. You can even catch grenades and throw them back.
Boom. All right, so that was that. Do you want to do creative process? I have it. Let's see.
Nailing the perfect marriage of story to gameplay is a science that many developers still struggle with today. Bioshock has left an indelible mark on gaming narrative that can be seen and felt in many modern releases. But Irrational's motto remains from the beginning, don't start with the story, start with the gameplay.
Creative
a lot of fans
process.
Probably wonder about the process you go through in writing the story and the design for a game like Bioshock. You've talked about how it evolves over time and what eventually ships is very different than your initial vision. Do you guys write like a script or a design document for the game and that becomes sort of the Bible that everyone drives towards, or do you iterate much more?
It's different for every game. Like System Shock 2, I went back to it recently. I wrote a design document, and like we started that project in September, and the design document I saw was dated like October or something. So like in a month, like I wrote the design document, and it didn't change. A lot of it, got expanded upon, but the basic design really didn't change on that. Where on Bioshock, I think it evolved in real time much more. Like we had a pretty substantial design shift, like a year before the ship date.
For Bioshock?
Bioshock, yeah. It got to be much more about the experience of being in Rapture than about being in your character sheet. And so the game evolved more towards that experiential kind of thing and making sure every idea was expressed in the world as well as just on your character sheet. So before you'd have a lot of things like, oh, I'm doing fire damage or electrical damage, but that was sort of a number flying off a head versus, the whole notion of like, there's barrels and you light them on fire and then you can pick them up and throw them.
But you'd have stats coming off characters and all that stuff?
Much more so.
Oh, really?
And that evolved, sort of, we did a design shift, but I don't know how well that got documented. I think we were moving so fast that we were just sort of changing things, laying down the tracks as we went right ahead of us. And the same with the screenplay, the screenplay there is no screenplay. It's a bunch of, probably Excel files and fragments of Word documents that I'd write and I'd go to recording sessions and I'd rewrite on the fly once I hear the actor perform. Because once the actor takes on it, you listen to their voice and you say, what you wrote doesn't really matter. Like, what is the right thing for this actor playing this role to be saying?
Very true.
So I tend to do a lot of rewriting in the session, and then
Very
like you have
true.
a bug late at night where somebody says, "Oh, this doesn't make any sense," and you're like, "Oh God," and you have to write a new audio log and try to get the actor back in, or you figure out what's the best way to get this idea across. And is it an audio log? Is it a poster on the wall? Is it a piece of text that pops up on the screen? That's always dependent on how much time you have and what actor availability is. So, the plans sort of fall apart. I think we've worked on that a bunch since on the new project we're working on, where we are trying to document things a lot better and keep things a lot more logical. But the train was running so fast on Bioshock that we just sort of.
Early on, we got the Andrew Ryan scene in, like we'd said before, and that was kind of like the keystone. Like, we're going to put a lot of work into this, so this can't change. Everything that happens before or after that don't really involve a lot of departments working together to make a scene, those things are very malleable. And if you need to change audio logs to represent a story, if you need to add lines or take away lines, that's very doable. And I think for a while we even had like text to speech.
We even did that, I remember for Infinite with Booker and Elizabeth and all their dialogue, and that really didn't work very well, because you'd have these dramatic scenes, and it'd be like, "Elizabeth, we need to go to Comstock," and it just, it was almost had no value as far as I was concerned.
The circuit of value.
Atlas radioed on ahead. Says you're looking for an invite to the fisheries. Nuts, I say. But if you heads up to the Wharf Master's office and find old Peach on research camera, maybe I could manage an invite.
Ken has so much of, these games in his head, and you're sort of, you can keep it all straight, or try to, with all the different things and changes. But from the team perspective, Sean, because this is evolving and Ken's thinking in his head about how this all ties together, how does the team sort of keep up with, what the whole game's going to look like?
There's a lot of specifics that can change. For instance, Atlas used to have a Southern drawl.
Right.
And then, we recast to the Irish.
And we actually cast an actor, wrote the lines, did the whole thing, and realized that people hated that character and distrusted him from the first start. So we had to rewrite him, recast him, redo everything.
Yeah. From a team perspective, you kind of get a sense on which things are going to be really volatile and that you probably want to push off till later, because if you work on it now, it might change. Larger themes don't tend to change too much, meaning we knew we were in Rapture, we knew we had Big Daddies, we knew we had Little Sisters, we knew we had Splicers, we knew what the arc of the story was about Jack coming into Rapture, and the specifics of this radiolog versus that radiolog didn't really affect anyone outside the audio team at that time, because we could still build the environment. We still knew what the environment was. We still knew what the animations were. There are areas you learn just by working in the same space for a while.
Shotgun is not fully loaded.
This scene, I'm not touching this yet because I know that it's going to get changed a lot. I think these themes are pretty nailed down, so I'm going to focus the team on getting these things done.
I won't leave you twisting in the wind. We're going to need to draw out of hiding, but you're going to have to trust me.
The audio logs were, a great part of the game, and something that if you're a true fan, people really go in.
We will buy both, but I think Astroneer will be first in my book. Yeah, in mine too.
And listen to those and piece that all together. But I imagine there's a lot of work that goes into deciding, well, this is better for an audio log versus game dialogue, and there's the act of sort of cutting back and sort of saying, we need to be clear about what the narrative is for the game. What was that process like? The audio logs, were there things you added at the end, or were those, ideas that you had for the game, but then said, hey, maybe we'd demote these a little bit and make them audio logs?
As Sean was saying, there's sort of a hierarchy of expense that you have to face, and so any ideas you have to get across, especially as you start playing the game, you realize, well, this doesn't make sense, that doesn't make sense. You have to figure out how you can introduce that idea. And generally, as the train is moving, you try to think of cheaper and cheaper ways to get those ideas across. It's less important, it goes to an audio log. If it's less important, it goes to a poster on the wall.
Well, there's also characters that you can bring in that have audio logs that aren't. Atlas, Tenenbaum, those are your big ones. You can bring in somebody
not fully loaded shotgun.
Short, a few different audio logs. It's a character that
only
some players may not even find, but it adds a little bit of depth to Rapture.
And it also, usually each character generally is a about a certain idea, and we don't just sort of come up with characters like we have an idea problem that we need to solve, and so let's introduce a character who's this guy, and he will be the guy who sort of shepherds you through that idea.
Julie, my dear, I am trying to run a business here. You want to spend time with my honeybees? Well, I'm gonna have to start charging you for the pleasure. If I come out one more time and find you lolling out there amongst my hives, I'm grabbing my shotgun. As to your question, yes, my days in beekeeping school are a blur, but I do seem to remember something about that enzyme you keep blabbing on about.
So as you're going through the game and, you know, writing things, rewriting things, were there things with the original Bioshock that you've always been surprised that more people didn't pick up on, or was there something that, you know, a connection to a character you thought was really going to resonate with people which, you know, didn't? Anything like that?
No, it's the opposite. I was amazed, I don't know how you felt, but I was amazed how many people connected to the Would You Kindly stuff. Because I think it was when I wrote that speech, I don't think anybody on the team was like, oh my God, this is like really this or that. And I don't think I really had any sense that people were going to connect to it. I think we ended up sort of over time finding more ways to support the notion throughout the game.
Yep.
And I don't think I really, until I heard Pat put together the revelation moment, you know, where it's like, you know, where you had all the bits that Atlas had said to you in the past building up, and then there was a visual that went along with that. That's when I realized it was going to be a really powerful moment. But even so, I still was, did I think people were really going to connect to it or really even understand it? Because it's pretty out there. And that it was meta commentary too. I think that completely, like, I think I thought like, oh, it's kind of meta, cool. But people connected to it in a much bigger way.
Yeah, the choice to engineering, and also just, you know, being able to kind of roll back and think of all those other moments throughout the game, and it's, you know, a great revelation like that.
So when they remastered the game, they recorded all of this stuff.
Again, you're like, oh wow, really, that does all make sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a team, we were definitely proud of what we had done, but up till that point, you know, SWAT 4 was the biggest game that we worked on, and we had no expectation of that anybody would pick this up, or even like Bioshock cosplay. I remember the first cosplay I saw with a guy in the Big Daddy suit, and his little daughter was in the kitchen cabinet. I think that was the first one I saw. I was like, whoa, people know this stuff? That's insane.
Yeah, people were building these outfits, and you know, that only expanded with Infinite. I mean, that sort of went crazy with Infinite, with people cosplaying Elizabeth and Luteces and Booker. It meant a lot to people, and I don't think that's something we ever saw coming, and we're deeply grateful for it, because it's one thing to make a game and get good reviews and stuff like that. It's another thing to have things that people are having their weddings themed around it, and their tattoos and naming their children after characters. You can't plan for that, and I think the only way that could happen is if you just make something that you're deeply in love with and passionate about. I can say we were. It was something there's a lot of passion on the team about, but we didn't know people were going to take away what they did.
Would you kindly? Would you kindly?
I still don't know why he wouldn't be revived after I kill him.
Would you kindly? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find it? Would you kindly find it? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
Part of the challenge with that, though, is when people love fiction so much and they dive into, you know, every word written in every audio log and try and connect all the fiction, make sure it all makes sense. Are there any things from that game that you sort of look back and say, like, oh, wow, like, we didn't explain this and we should have, or things that fans have misinterpreted?
I think Astroneer will be a bigger deal
things we think
than the toxic biome, you know?
That should have or shouldn't have been in the game. Like I was never a fan of having two endings, and I think
that's why the publisher was asking you to sort of have a.
That was the one thing that 2K, and they were very hands off. That was the one thing they insisted on, and it's not something I really thought was a good idea, because they're still limited, even though they're multiple. They're still limited, and so that was something that we ended up doing. One of the endings was far better than the other one. I mean, there's no. It's clear that I was much more interested in the happier ending with the little sisters than I was with the nuclear submarine ending.
I'm sure part of it was the idea that, you know, if this game is, if you're making a choice throughout it, I'm sure when some people are like, oh, well, then it has to be a payoff, right?
Right. Except the game was really about lack of choice. Not being a choice. So that always struck me as a tension that was weird. But you know, look, at the end of the day, they were putting up a lot of money, and you know, so I can't really complain. They weren't dictatorial at all during the development. So that was the one thing, but. That's a game that I wouldn't have put the boss battle in, the final boss battle. Like we seem to end up doing that over and over and over again. Every time we start a project, I'm like, I'm never going to do that again. We're never going to do that again, and we end up doing it.
Right.
We're not good at boss battles, and that you're fighting that guy, and look, this is the naked dude. It just doesn't work.
Totally makes sense.
But and it works really pretty well up till then, but then it doesn't. It just doesn't work. That boss battle's silly.
All right, we are not having this. We are not having this. But what is this one here? Reality check. Reality check.
From the moment you boot up Bioshock, you can feel the story grab hold of you. A plane crashes at sea, a mysterious lighthouse, a sprawling city beneath the ocean. Hooking the player from the first touch without overwhelming him with convoluted RPG mechanics was key to the success of the game and the skillful ramping up of Bioshock's legendary gameplay.
I wish this thing would have controls. It doesn't. Like pause, skip forward, go back, start over. It doesn't have controls.
Bioshock has an amazing opening sequence that I can't imagine the game without it, with the plane and sort of the crash. But I understand that didn't come online until like the very end of development. Sean, is that true?
We had a couple of really depressing playtests. We had built all these systems. We thought we were doing a good job of like giving basically people a playground to play with and things to do. And when we had a playtest, we didn't realize how bad of a job we were doing in exposing those systems to the player, because we were so in these systems and in our own heads, we had no idea that we just weren't facing them towards the player at all. So after that playtest, we took a long, cold look at what we were doing and realized that we had to introduce we were confident enough in the systems that they were going to be fun and meaningful to the player, but we really had to think about how we were going to introduce these systems to the player, and in such a way that they understand why the systems were there. Like, you can't ship a README file with the game and expect people to read it. Like, it has to be part of the experience. So the challenge is, how do you introduce people to these systems, but do it in such a way that it fits within the narrative? So we had to integrate all of these things into the story cleanly so that the player felt like it was one smooth experience. And I think the zap 'em and whack 'em thing was one of those.
And the 1-2 punch.
Yeah, the 1-2 punch that came out of that.
The plane sequence at the beginning, I heard a story that like a programmer put that together in like a day or two, and it was a very last minute thing, right?
It was. So we had done a focus test, and we had it was one of the most depressing experiences in my life, because we were very close to being finished, and it was basically giving people what essentially became the demo, and people played it, and it was in Boston, and we were sort of behind these glass windows, all these sort of Boston guys like, this is a wicked piece of shit. They hated it, and they were making fun of it, and they were saying, it's like watching some guys and dolls beating each other up, and it's the stupidest thing they've ever seen. And we thought we were in pretty good shape at that point. And I remember the focus test guy was like sort of like a doctor giving me the bad news. Sorry, Ken, you better get your affairs in order. Right. And we all came into work the next day, and we were like, what are we going to do? And we're all pretty depressed. But I think we started talking. And as we talked, we started thinking about, what are they saying to us? What are these people saying to us? We think there's something there. How are they missing it? And we decided that maybe they didn't understand who they were and who their role as a character, who their role in the world was, because the game at that point started with you in the ocean, floating in the ocean after the plane crash. And
the crash still was in the fiction, it just wouldn't show it.
You just didn't see it, so you didn't have the voiceover saying, my parents always said I was going to do great things or whatever that. They didn't show the plane crash. We didn't establish a time period. Because the plane is critical to establishing. You're smoking a cigarette. It's very 1960s looking. All that stuff was established. It wasn't established. So we decided we had no time and no money so we sort of came up with a script. I wrote some lines, a line, I think. Nate, one of our artists, recorded the line. Steven and Sean and those guys got to work on building this very simple sequence, which was simple, relatively simple sequence, and then the plane crash actually happens over the Bioshock logo we already had, but we wrote a radio play behind that with altitude of the crash, and that I think set the emotional, and the people screaming in terror on the plane crash, that set the emotional tenor much better and explained who the player was. And all of a sudden, we released. Then I think the next real encounter we had was people playing the demo, public encounter, and all of a sudden it was a very different experience.
No, I remember even back in the day, I think we did a thing on TV where you kind of talked about it, and it was like that night, and I remember that night, like people on the forums were just like going nuts. And even though the game had a lot of press attention, when people finally got to play it and go through that sequence, I just remember there was this mass sort of excitement around it, and then the game shipped only a few weeks after that, right, or a month after that?
A week later, or a few days later.
It's amazing, like now to hear that, like literally like a month before the game came out, like the plane sequence came online or something. I mean, it was that late. Right?
Well, we still had to go through certification and all that.
So it's like within.
It wasn't far. It wasn't far. It was really last minute, and it was one of those things where like you really shouldn't be putting in content that late. Yeah. But we felt that we were so close to having something good that we just rolled the dice on it, and we worked really hard on it. Like we worked really hard. I remember how much time I spent on just that recorded of altitude. I could still hear the different version of that in my head. There's been so much time on that stuff, and these guys were working on getting the animations right, and
the scene was shot in engine, but we decided to pre-render it so that we had to do less QA on it.
Right.
It wasn't going to be some like weird streaming error or crash error. Wow. It was just like, we're just going to show the video,
And it's interesting because once you start in the ocean, we had this experience of testing a lot with the water effects and how beautiful Steven's water effects were. People didn't realize they were out of a cutscene at that point. And so they would just sit there and stare, and then they pick up the controller. And they pick up the controller, and all of a sudden they realize they were controlling things. But that, as Sean said, that part of the plane is not actually interactive. It was done in the engine, but we just filmed it.
Now, as people were playing through the game and you were testing it, I'm sure there was debate about, when would you introduce this plasmid, what would the ramp be? Did that change at all, sort of as you got towards the end of development, about like, we're going to give people the gun at this point, or it's like, we're going to trigger these plasmids at this point? Like, how did that work?
So, like, we moved guns around. Like, for instance, there was a big debate about, originally you found a gun in the lighthouse, a pistol in the lighthouse.
Oh,
at the very
right
beginning.
there,
And because it's a shooter, right? Like, what the hell? And we had a lot of debates about it, and I feel that it was important that we didn't do that.
Get the wrench.
The fact that you sort of go through a lot of the experience without having the distraction of a gun is important to getting you immersed in the world. Because when you have all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? But you don't have the hammer, so you just sort of had to take in the world and have that feeling of fear. And like I know when you saw that splicer bounding around on the ceiling, that you couldn't do anything about it, and that had even though that's
those are those moments, right? Like I remember when I played Unreal for the first time, where it's like you're trapped and there's a monster and you can't do it, and the lights go out. It's like that's the moment with the splicer where you're like, I want to do something but I can't, and that evokes an emotion.
That's in the very beginning, before you get out of the sphere.
I remember we kept, moving where the machine gun appeared around and where various plasmids appeared around. It was a real, it's a real fine-tuning process.
Yeah, and it gave us an opportunity, like especially with the shotgun, to really present the weapons, like put some space between them.
It's a moment when you finally.
Yeah, I think
we get the shotgun Paul sequence.
Paul Hellquist was he put the sequence together for the when you see the shotgun laying in the pool of light. Like every game developer knows what that means. The minute you pick that thing up, something's going to happen. But it was still a very effective way, as I'm remembering it, to, oh look, I've been waiting for this thing, I'm going to pick it up, and now you have an immediate opportunity to use it. But at the same time, we're trying to ramp up the tension level by having the splicers kind of on the outside of the light, so you can't really see them, and then coming in one at a time and attacking you.
And we had very few tools to really control how the splicers acted. So how they were set up and how the environment was lit was really important.
There's even other things like when you get the TK plasmid, I don't think we had a lot
telekinesis,
of physical space and opportunity and time to really present that. So we came up with the narrative that it was the doctor's office and he used TK to practice tennis, and we had the turret in there that threw tennis balls
I remember that.
So if you wanted to, you could catch the tennis balls and throw them, and you could knock things down. I think it revealed pickups that you could then pull to yourself with TK. But we're always trying to think of like little backstories that we could do. It doesn't have to be as involved as the shotgun ambush. Sometimes it's just, oh, let's take a grenade turret and turn it into a tennis ball turret.
Because we want to, yeah, like, because I remember, like, the impulse was, you know, I've been to dentist office, and there's always some, like, weird aspect of the dentist personality. They always want to get through their office, you know. They always have to have their hobby featured in some way, and so we saw an opportunity there to both feature this, he's a tennis nut, and teach TK at the same time.
Yeah, that machine. I remember that. Alright, so that was the creative process, reality check, then here a world of... Oh, man, I can't read shit without the glasses. A world of themes. A world of themes.
Rapture is overflowing with memorable locations and set pieces. In developing a world that feels organic, lived in, and functional, Irrational managed to create a space that feels perfectly suited to the story and action that takes place in it, which begs a question: did the plot shape the location, or did the plot fit squarely into a world that was already established?
Yeah, I wish there would be controls. I would fast forward this, because we've seen this like 5 times already.
Let's talk about some of the areas in Rapture, because it's an amazing place, but also it feels like there's certain areas that are very well designed, and that they have, you know, a very certain aesthetic, and the characters in there, it all kind of comes together. Ken, do you have a part of Rapture that resonates the most with you still to this day?
I think the opening is always going to be the most important to me, because it's we spent a lot of time there, and
to get it
right.
right.
All for me as a challenge, as a narrative guy, is sort of how do we set up a very complex series of events and a very complex notion, and all this, you know, Andrew, with so much to tell, Big Daddies and Little Sisters and Andrew Ryan and the time period, and do that all without cutscenes. And especially, I think, the descent to Rapture when you're in
no
the
kings.
in the bathysphere, you know, getting
it's
that
2025
right,
and we have no kings again.
The bathysphere, cresting the hill and seeing the city for the first time. Remember how much we worked on the timing of that, just getting that.
And it took us forever to figure out that we should just put the slide projector covering the window. Like, again, in hindsight, it seems like such an obvious choice, but we were really trying to figure out, like, how are we going to tell this story of Ryan and then reveal, so you can see the, you know, the city beyond the hill.
And also, we didn't have to show the whole transition going down to the bottom of the ocean, because the whole screen was covered.
Spoiler alert.
I think that's the part that will always be near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was Kashmir.
Yeah.
That was one of the first...
The restaurant at the beginning.
Yeah, the restaurant at the beginning, because it was really like the first art box that we created that was Rapture. I mean, we created spaces before that weren't really hitting the Art Deco look. Scott Sinclair had just started, and he built that, designed and built that statue of the Atlas with the world on his shoulders that was in the middle of the room. And Mauricio had done some concept art for us of that space. And once we started putting everything together and getting it into Engine and actually walking around it and seeing those giant windows off to the side that just showed the seascape and really drove home the fact that you were underwater. It was the first time really all the elements started to come together.
And we actually we had built a bunch of stuff, and we actually stepped back and said, we have to just get one room right before we go any further, because we weren't getting it right. And so Mauricio did that concept drawing. We worked really hard on that statue, and that statue, I think, was the first object we really built in the game that was a Bioshock. So we just stayed in that room for like a month until we got it right.
And I think the original concept actually had a tram running through it. So it was like even more complicated, and that was one of those things where we had to keep pulling back to really focus on what the bare essence of that room was.
Were there parts of Rapture that you never were able to realize that you sort of still
the
missed?
zoo.
The zoo. People
We
talked
had
about
a zoo
Frolic, right?
that I was excited about. Not everybody was excited about the zoo, but I don't know why I was excited about the zoo, because it would have been a nightmare. We had another area that was prior to Arcadia that was more of a straight up agriculture, forest type of area.
Before we had the bathyspheres, we had a whole sort of subway transport system in Rapture, which we spent a lot of time thinking about, and then just realized that these little submersibles would be a much better, much more realistic and much better solution.
And you were going to be able to move between locations in that subway system?
Yeah, much like the bathrooms, but they were much more integrated throughout the space, and we really want to support them. And we just realized it was not really relevant to what we were doing.
Were there certain locations or areas where you knew a certain narrative point, needed to happen? Like you look at, the reveal of sort of Atlas's true motivations. Like, was that like, oh, we've got to do it this level because it fits the story? Or was it more that you sort of like, you had the game laid out in a certain order and you just layered the story on top of it?
I think the big one I can think of is that you would...
Update and DLC. Planet Crafter is starting to show a lot of bugs. Yeah.
Counter Ryan in his sort of like that he would live in an area of industry.
Okay.
So he lives in this very industrial area because that's where he would feel most comfortable. And that we wanted his office, his lair, to sort of be not in some residential zone, but where he wants to wake up and smell the grease fires and and the machines and the smoke. That's in his lifeblood. Industry is his lifeblood.
But it also had to be very theatrical. Like if you look at it now, it doesn't look like an office. You kind of know it's an office because the story is telling you that.
Set, yeah.
And we had some old technology that was laying around in the game that would control environment settings. So old system that we had would let you do high pressure, low pressure, medium pressure. And those would affect lighting and other like post-process things in the world. And that was a system that was cut, but because the code was in, we were always trying to figure out ways to use it. And one of the ways that we used it was in the Andrew Ryan sequence, because we didn't have a lot of narrative storytelling tools. We were basically switching the atmosphere to get all the lighting changes. So whenever a light changes in that scene, we're telling the game that the atmosphere is changing. And then the preset atmospheres come in and shine the spotlights on them or bring up the house lights when we need them to.
Because very, very early on, you could change the pressure in the areas, and that would change how explosions worked and all this stuff like that. And we just couldn't figure out how to make it gettable for the player. We couldn't make it feedback, but we still had all those. That moved a lot of levers in the game, so we still had the system. So we used it for the sort of theatrical cues of the, very theatrical cues of Ryan appearing, the lights going down where you are, and the lights coming up where he is, because the engine didn't have those tools by default.
The assassin has overcome my final defense, and now he's come to murder me. In the end, what separates a man from a slave? Money? Power? No. A man chooses. A slave obeys.
And there was a great sense of sort of artistic progression as you went through the game too, and that each level had its own sort of voice. Was that something that a lot of games as they move further in development, it's like, oh, we sort of ran out of time. It's like we're just going to sort of repeat this and change the color palette. It felt like, for the team, it was very defined from early on that you wanted each sort of level, which they were levels back in the day, to feel distinct.
Yeah, we had sort of experimented with that back on System Shock 2, back when every Doom level looked pretty much like every other Doom level, because they were just sort of working on the same.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bryce, that Aston Mirror is a DLC and an update.
That we would progress with color, and every deck would feel different from a color standpoint, even though most of that was lighting, or textures, nothing really more. But we had the tools to actually, sort of theme levels. I think a lot of this goes back to, I think my first memory was actually from when I was 1 year old at the Montreal World Expo.
Remember when you were 1?
Well, I remember being at something at this World's Fair, which I didn't realize, I think, was in 1967, when I was 1 year old, a little over 1 year old. And I was on a theme park ride they had and I remember being at this thing where a big bat flies out of this sort of thing and comes up. I don't know why I was a 1 year old was on this ride. I'm not sure, sort of a haunted housey kind of ride. And I remember loving it. And I think that stuck with me. So the notion of sort of theme parky themes and settings, and Disney World does a great job with this. You can go to Disney World, they theme areas. So themed areas are something that always resonated with me. And Bioshock sort of always has had this notion of feeling of theme in different areas, much more than the real world has. Like you walk from building to building, most then you can't really tell them apart. You walk from walk from a floor of an office building to another floor. It's not going to look any different. But we always felt that was really important.
And it's also, if you look at SWAT 4, saw some early experiments with this, especially like the serial killer's house level in SWAT 4, which is probably one of the most dense levels that we ship, but you were trying to tell a specific story with that. And going straight into Bioshock and using the same exact engine that we're using, and we were very comfortable at that point with how the engine worked and how to art up these rooms, gave us a leg up when we sat down and really thought about what stories are we specifically trying to tell. And one of my favorite anecdotes from this time period is with Sander Cohen. I think it was Nate Wells and Stephen Alexander sat down one night, and they came up with a backstory for every dead body that you find in that space, and then they told that story with the props that they could. Even if it was just like, this guy crawled 3 feet and then shot himself in the head because he was sad about something, you know, they put those marks in, maybe put a picture next to the guy, and then he shot himself. So they really like did their homework and tried to add, you know, the backstory for everything that you're going to find in that space.
I've got Atlas's goons hitting us non-stop and 2 dead mechanics just this week. We need to control costs. If I wanted to deal with amateurs, I would have stayed on dry land.
Interesting. So now we have Rapture's denizens. We had the world of themes, Rapture's denizens.
Iconic and haunting, the Big Daddy and Little Sisters of Bioshock immediately captivated the public's imagination. Big Daddy encounters defined the Bioshock experience, creating new mechanics and techniques that had not been seen before in gaming.
I tried cursor keys, it doesn't do anything.
So Big Daddy, Little Sister, such an iconic moment or series of moments in this game. I'm fascinated about how that got layered in, because we talked a lot about the setting and the tone. That is still to me, you know, a mechanic that I remember was very unique about, you know, choosing to engage the Big Daddy and being a fight that you know is going to be very aggressive and different.
We watched this already.
Traditional boss fight. I know you had an idea, kind of sort of 3 different types of AIs interacting in the same world.
Yeah, we were sort of like...
No, we watched this already. We watched this as well, right?
Bioshock was groundbreaking in many regards when it released in 2007, though fundamentally it shared many consistencies with Irrational's System Shock series. What elements of System Shock translated into Bioshock?
Yeah, so the last one. Somehow, this must have gotten selected. So we didn't find 3 of the commentaries, which is really sad. Questions of morality. That's going to be the last one, and probably an interesting one. It tells me that the Proving Grounds has this one, Fort Frolic has this one, and this is Welcome to Rapture. So we missed 3.
To kill, excuse me, to harvest or not to harvest, the moral dilemma that follows you throughout the Bioshock experience and defines the fate of the player. This choice lays at the center of your Bioshock story and has repercussions that can be felt in nearly every facet of the gameplay.
Part of Bioshock's lasting legacy, of course, are the Little Sisters and this moral choice that presented itself to the player. You know, everyone became a water cooler conversation about, like, well, did you save them? Did you harvest them? That concept, Ken, was that something that came about early in development, or that binary choice? When did that come into the game?
I don't remember when. I mean, we had the concept of them being protected, but I can't remember when you actually
it certainly
chose.
wasn't. When there were slugs, it was not meaningful. I think there was...
Do you salt it? Do you not salt it?
Yeah. There were resources that you could get, but there was no choice there, right? The choice was, do I want to fight the Big Daddy or not?
Yeah.
I think once we got into the realm of they have to be empathetic, the player has to have some feeling towards them, which you're not going to get from slugs, right. Then we start seeing that opportunity there of like, okay, nobody's going to want to do harm to these girls, or do they? Like, and do we allow them to? It was we weren't comfortable with it at first when it first came up that we could.
I think it was important that it was a way to reflect the sort of larger economic questions of a world like Rapture, where where the economy drives everything. Are there any limits to economic decision making versus moral decision making? Because that's sort of what the Randian notion is that it's not the role that you don't sort of legislate morality. Let's try to take that to an extreme and see where that ends up. And Little Sisters sort of became that. And in this world, they became a commodity.
No.
And the question we have for the players, are you willing, they're a commodity to you as well, potentially. Are you willing to participate in the commodification? There was, I think, a fair amount of nervousness internally at the publisher about it for a little while, but pretty quickly they were able to sort of say, look, we trust you guys, and go, do this. And I only had a few, the press, and this sort of happens over and over again. The games press worried a ton about it and wring their hands about it. They ever recognized it was a setting topic, but that it was done to a larger purpose. That it wasn't just sort of like, hey, this is the game where you kill children. And
and that was a sensitivity. I know that you guys wanted to call them little sisters, not little girls, and it was and it wasn't it wasn't killing them, it was harvesting them. And I mean, you did some things probably on purpose, right, to sort of explain that this you weren't doing anything vicious to them, right?
Well, I mean, they do sort of disappear out of you, and a big slug out of their belly, comes up that you. Well, we didn't want that to be graphic. We wanted to be very clear that you were killing
gruesome. Yeah, right.
Yeah. But it was not intended to be a prurient in terms of, hey, this is a simulation of pulling a sea slug out of a little girl's belly. But we wanted you to understand that you were making a very diabolical moral economic pact there. And we think that came across, and I think it came across well enough. And I think the test of how well it came across is, I think most people didn't really thought of it as am I willing to do this thing or not? Right. And people would tell us stories how their girlfriend saw them harvesting, and then they literally slept on the couch that night. Right. And that's that's an interesting, that was interesting how people connected to a 3D mesh that's really no different than any other 3D mesh in the world. This little sister, she's not a person. She's a 3D asset, a virtual 3D asset, right? That has a voice actor connected to it who's an adult woman. And nobody was actually getting harmed, but people still emotionally connected to them and made an emotional connection.
And also, I think when you're playing, you don't really know what the impact of that choice is.
Yes.
And that's sort of the curiosity of you're a gamer, so it's like, am I going to game the system? Which one should I pick? How does this impact things as you go through the game? It's never.
I think you get much better rewards when you
that choice is
rescue
going to
them.
lead to, right? And the ambiguousness of that was something you wanted to sort of create mystery around throughout the game.
Yeah, we went back and forth a lot about what the rewards for harvesting versus saving would be, and actually, I think we should have really pushed further that the rewards for saving were much more should have been much more meager than the rewards for harvesting, just to really sort of put you up against the wall, push you up against the wall, and say, are you going to stick by your moral guns here because you're going to pay for it? Because that's usually the way life is, right? It's always harder to take a moral path than it is to take an amoral path.
You get a lot of rewards.
There's incentives to take amoral paths.
200 Adam.
It's the easier path.
Oh, this is how it looks like when you kill it.
As you play through the game, eventually you get to the ending, and as we know now, there were sort of two endings that were affected by that choice.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something at the time. I know you said publicly that you weren't in favor of sort of having two endings. Was that in part because the game is about not having choice, or did you think that the two endings were? I don't know. I'm interested for narratively, why you didn't want to go that path.
It seemed forced, given that the game really sort of almost made a joke. I mean, a meta commentary joke about the lack of agency in games, the lack of meaning of those choices, given that you have these two endings. I guess you could make an argument that, well, you were free, you were given choice of once Ryan's dead, and that's really what it's about. But I think we also didn't really have enough time to execute on those super I was pretty happy with how the happier one
was
came
checking
out, you know, with
YouTube.
the sort of little sister focus, but it's a much more subtle story than I would have time to tell about you, sort of your slow descent into, you know, moral chaos and,
Right.
and dissolute living and all the things that sort of come along with a life that is sort of separate from a moral structure. It's a long story.
And that's what I mean. You were just switching a cutscene. It wasn't like you were doing sort of a
No.
whole other level that was different or something. So the choice was
There's 2 cutscenes with very tight time and economic
or
constraints.
just start a nuclear war.
Yes, and that's not, you know,
You're a
that's,
nice guy, or you start a nuclear
yeah,
war.
and because we had so many problems on our plate, that was something I had to sort of do in the spare time. So I was pretty happy with one, but not very happy with the other.
I know you had said publicly before that there was another sort of more ambiguous ending that you had originally planned, or what would you have done?
Oh, interesting.
There was a notion of an ambiguous ending, in which if I just wrote one, I would have found a way that would just talk about the moral ambiguity of the world rather than the sort of, you know, positive or negative, because it is such a, look, I think we really tried with Bioshock not to sort of make a game about good and evil. It's really about circumstances and what circumstances lead people to. Right. And how they delude themselves with ideology to do things that they would think are evil, but it's okay because it's for the good cause. Right. And that's what I probably would have. If I just had one to write, I'd probably focus more on that. You know, how difficult it is to sort of align when you start being driven by ideology rather than being in the moment and thinking about the impact of what you're doing.
Right. Sean, you talked to gamers, I'm sure, over the years. Did you ever get a sense of how many people harvested versus saved, and was there any sort of data? I mean, this is before the days where you get telemetry and data on like what people picked and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, anecdotally, it seems like more people saving Little Sisters. Although, I have a few friends that were, I just harvested every single one. I wanted to see what happened. So I mean, I don't know if that was more, the game developer and them trying to see, what would happen, but certainly for the most part, I think most people. Which I guess is a good thing. It means that maybe people are good at heart. They kind of feel that and they want to save the Little Sisters. So yeah, I'll say it. The needle sways towards the green there.
Time for bed-bye, Mr. B.
Time to go to
Hurry,
bed.
Mr. Bubbles.
All right, guys, this is it. We watched everything. I don't think there's anything else. Let's look. Maybe we can find something. What is museum? All right, let's do this. So orphan concept. Oh, I need to catch the writing here. That must be the third one. The one that didn't make it. Slow protum. Profon. Slow profum. Yeah, so this is the guy that was cut. What's with this guy? Oh, that's the original one. He didn't have hands. Yeah, this guy has hands, and he uses tools. This guy has like stompy things for hands. The early bouncer. I like that valve up there. That is pretty sweet. Let's look on the other side. Forest concept art. Those were the early slugs. Oh, I can actually go in there. The early slugs. They were then replaced by the Little Sisters. Oh, this is pretty cool. Stitchy. This thing is frightening. There's a shotgun too. Early slicer concept art. So he has like some mutation and a pistola. This looks like 1911 or something. There's a shotgun. Early splicer concept art. Oh, dude, this thing looks amazing. Priam hand. Early splicer. Kind of like this guy. That's pretty neat. Early Big Daddy. Early Big Daddy. Look how the water seeps in. Fleet Hall concept art. That's the restaurant, I think, right? First image that really captured all the visual elements of that made Bioshock Bioshock. A large view of the ocean, aquatic lighting scene, and the elegant art deco design elements. Without this image, Bioshock would have been a radically different beast. And you see here Atlas, right? Atlas is that guy that has the planet on its shoulders. Yam hand model. Those are all the things that didn't make it into the game. The game used to look like way more monstery, huh? Check out this guy. Creature. Do we have any creatures in the game? I think they're all human. That makes the game even more special. Right? Because if you have like aliens, then shooting aliens does not have a moral dilemma. So this one has like some kind of slug attached to it. See on the top. Missing link model. Neat. Bathyspheres. Right, and you see in the background there is that subway concept with the tubes. Yeah. And this guy is bursting through the wall. That was at the zoo. That only happens once in the game, that the Big Daddy is going. We looked at these guys, we didn't look at these guys. It has like tentacles, this thing. Protector. Right, he has tentacles, but he's using a shotgun of some sort in his hands. This looks like a riveter, right? Protector concept art. Here's another protector, missing arm, and here's that hook of some sort that he can probably shoot. Oh, that is a complicated. We have the hook person in the game. Yeah, see, they are like running on the ceiling. Very skinny. This is a very like 90s concept art, right? Hooker. The spider splicer, yeah. Yeah, the windows are leaking water. Neptune's Bounty concept art. Some kind of elevator that goes into the water. Early environmental study. Holy moly, look at this big boy. Jesus Christmas. There's like something sticking out of him, like knives or something. Look at those fingers. Jesus. There's a whole bunch of bags. I think the bags, they don't have meshes. So they just come through as black. Including the backpack. But here you see how this was supposed to look like. This guy has like all kinds of tonics and stuff. Right? And he's probably using like magic. It's like, you know, like a tonic wielding magic user. What does it say? Grenadier Splicer. Oh, nice. We looked at that, and I think that concludes it, right? Yeah, we looked at all of it. Neat. So we did museum, additional content. I guess that's the last one. So it's like puzzles that you need to solve. And it's counting the time. It's already counting time. That's the difference. No, I can't go there. So this is not the main game, but I'm not super sure what we are supposed to be doing here. Oh, we need to pick up roses, okay. There's a lot of E-typos, I'm not gonna lie.
Finished yet?
Of course. This was without anything, so it's impossible to hack this thing. It's not possible to hack it. I could make an automatic hack tool, but I don't have the resources yet. I don't think if I can die in this game. I might not be able to. I don't have any weapons, so I don't know what to do with it. Let's see if I can die or not. I don't even know where the turret is. Oh, the turret is over here, right? Yeah, I can definitely die. I can definitely die. Yeah, I don't know if I want to deal with this. It's like some interesting puzzles that you can solve. And then you do something with this guy here. Right. All right, everyone. Hope you guys enjoyed that. That's it for today. We streamed for an hour and 46 minutes, right? So it's a little bit on the shorter side, but not overly so. I'm happy that we were able to complete the game, and there was some additional content that I wanted to see anyways, right? And so now you guys got to see it as well. Shorter day, yes. Thanks for watching, Fred. So tomorrow is going to be the Outer Worlds. Good game, right? Good game. The Outer Worlds, and then on the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, I will play Far Cry New Dawn, and just because I want to get into that, back into it, and then not long on the 22nd. What did Bryce say? On the 20th, right? On the December. Oh, did you say December? No, November 20th. So November 20th is on Thursday in 2 weeks is going to be Astoria, and I'm looking forward to it, right? Remember on my channel, I have like Astroneer ideas or something like that, right? And there is like 5 or 6 videos that I made. One of those videos is about, what did I call it? Um, vanity buildings, right? So just for fun, right? But buildings that need dozens of resources that cannot be currently printed, right? Because a printer can have only 4 resources and that's it, right? So, but here the idea of vanity buildings was, maybe 20 resin, 50 steel, and then like some 20 glass for the windows, that kind of stuff, and you get sort of like a hydroponic farm, right? It doesn't do anything, right? It just looks cool. That was my idea, right? Just so that you can start building cities and stuff like that, right? Um, I have still not. I mean, I'm not going to exploit the duplication glitch with the packager because we are not going to do a billion bytes, right? That was a one-time thing. Um, and there's in the base game, there's really no need to do a duplication glitch, there is plenty of resources of everything, but I'm looking forward to playing the DLC. And I haven't played the game. I don't know how tappers work. Tappers, right? Never used a tapper in my life before, right? The last one that we played was the one planet per solar system, and it took like 2 hours to go into the next cave layer. The first time because we didn't have any resources, right? To make a rover and stuff like that. After that, we had the resources and we could just drive the rover down, and it was no big deal, right? But the first time going down on that rickety ramp for like 2 hours, that was something. I was sweating balls. um, Astroneer, you play the best. Thanks so much, man. I enjoy playing Astroneer. It's just that, you know, the game was out of content for a very long time. We tried everything. We even tried things that were not possible, like the ball pit. Remember, we made like a whole bunch of balls, and then I gave it to Bryce, and Bryce ran it on his good computer, and he still only got like 5 FPS. I gave the save game to Bryce, right? It just didn't. Some things just didn't work out in the game, right? The engine wasn't good enough, right? Um, I'm going to remember that, Bryce. That was fun, right? That was a fun time. And I'm going to hold off on Starseeker until I see a couple of videos, because I have a feeling that Starseeker is more of a multiplayer game. I want to see if Starseeker makes sense to be played by a single player. And if that's an enjoyable experience, sure, why not try it out, right? Engine exploded. Yep, yep. All right, guys, so thank you so much for watching. That said, I do provide fresh content on YouTube every day, so if you guys want to get notified when there is something new to watch, please subscribe and hit the bell icon, right? The bell icon is what gives you those notifications 100%. The subscription does not. However, by subscribing, you're still supporting me. That said, we also have a Discord. That's our primary method of communication, and we have a merch store as well. Both the Discord invite and the merch store link can be found on my website, the video description, and the YouTube channel. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I see